On the Future Car podcast, we touch on many aspects of our future mobility, such as autonomous and electric cars, as well as other modes of transportation, air taxis, electric boats. But today, we're going to take a look at yet another form of our future mobility, traveling to space. In recent years, space travel has changed from something that only a few could experience to becoming more accessible, with many commercial companies jumping into the space travel business. And with us today is the founder and CEO of one of those companies, Jane Pointer of Space Perspective, where they've developed the world's first carbon neutral way to travel to the edge of space propelled by a balloon, and with a goal to change people's view and perception of Earth. Jane, welcome to the Future Car podcast.
Hello. How fun to be here.
Listen, I want to start right away and ask you about the Explorers Club, which you are a member of. And that is a group of members that are responsible for the famous firsts of humankind. The first to the top of Mount Everest, the first to the North and South Pole, the first to the moon's surface. So tell me, what is the key thing that Space Perspective hopes to be the first of?
Ooh, love it. So, what we're really about is completely changing the paradigm of space. I mean, you said it right at the beginning, right? That really to date, space has really been for the few. And we are wanting to completely change that so that we can have thousands of people going to space. Remember, to date, only 650 people have ever been to space. Fewer than that number. I mean, that's a minuscule number of people. And we're wanting to be the first to take thousands and thousands of people to space every year.
Part of this, one of the things when I first heard about you, it says completely carbon neutral way to get to space. And you think, oh, how could that be possible? I see these rockets going up into space, all this smoke and everything going on, exhaust, whatever it's called. Sustainability is a big part of what you're trying to do. How was that an inspiration, and how did it play a key part in what you're doing at Space Perspective?
It's actually core to the business, and it actually goes all the way back to my days in Biosphere 2. So Tabor McCallum and I, my co-founder and I, were involved in a project back in the early 90s. Actually, we were on the design team in the 80s and then lived in it in the early 90s for 2 years and 20 minutes, though who's counting? And just to remind us all what Biosphere 2 was, it at the time was sealed tighter than the International Space Station. It was the very first time that we, humanity, attempted to build the world's first human-made biosphere. It was called Biosphere 2 because, the idea being that planet Earth, our biosphere on the planet, is Biosphere 1. And so we lived inside there, and all of our oxygen was coming from the plants around us. We knew moment to moment that our CO2 was going out to grow our food. We could see the edges of our world with that glass and steel structure around us. And it was really interesting, right? So I went into the biosphere thinking that this was the closest thing that I'm ever get to going to Mars. I went there because I thought it was about going to space. And when I went in, I realized it was also about discovering our planetary biosphere that we all inhabit together. And it turns out that is a very akin experience to that which astronauts have when they see Earth from space. And what it does is when the astronauts see Earth in space, right, they see that thin blue line of our atmosphere. They see the Earth against the blackness of space. And they get this visceral understanding that we live together as a human family on planet Earth. So this experience actually creates a response that makes one proactively want to solve the grand challenges of today. So it is absolutely at the core of what we're doing at Space Perspective, wanting to take thousands of people up to have that experience and do something amazing with that experience.
You gave a talk, it was a TED Talk about your time in Biosphere, and I think to tie it back to that a little bit, One of the things you mentioned in that talk is when we breathe, we could be breathing carbon from a dinosaur or Julius Caesar or who knows, or our great, 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 great grandchildren. And in effect, right, I think what you're saying here is when you see the planet without the borders, you know, we're sharing carbon from everything that's lived on Earth that, you know, exudes carbon, right? But you're also now sharing this commonplace that we all have, and you start to think of it more as one or something that's shared by all of us. It seems like.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, and I think what becomes supremely apparent is really the only border that counts is the border of that thin blue line of our atmosphere against the vacuum of space. That suddenly becomes supremely apparent, that that black vacuum is not hospitable to life, right? But here on planet Earth, it is our oasis. And that is what becomes so apparent.
So do you think, what if we could take the right group of people, political leaders from Earth, and bring them up into your spaceship, Neptune, as it's called? Do you think that could be a way we could solve some of Earth's problems?
So I love that question because, yes, I do. And I think that, you know, for us at Space Perspective, we want to take people of all sorts to space, right? So we want to take artists, scientists, leaders, everyone, because you know, they're all going to go to space and have their own experience and come back and communicate it in ways that hasn't been communicated differently. You know, I think, you know, decisions around climate change would be so much easier if we all really viscerally at our core understand that we are part of a biosphere and we are completely reliant on it, as frankly it is on us at this point, right?
Well, absolutely. It's the collective us, right? All of us. Well, let's imagine that you could put together the right set of people to take up there. So I guess two-part question, like who would you bring up to solve the world's problems? But more importantly, there's going to be that moment, right? And I bet you could probably look at people's faces and say, oh, they're having it. They're having the overview effect. And right, and then there's probably you change a little bit, I would imagine. And what would you say to them? Like, what question would you pose to them at that moment to get them talking about the right things? Have you ever...
Yeah, I think this is a super, super interesting question. I don't know that I have the answer for you, Ed. You know, one of the things we talk a lot about with Spaceship Neptune, right? It doesn't really require training. It's a very gentle experience. It's a very accessible experience, right? I mean, if you can get on a commercial airline, you can get on Spaceship Neptune. That's what this space balloon affords us. But now that means we can take anyone to space, but they need to be prepared for it.
There you go. And I think you gave that example, right? When astronauts come back to Earth and they tend to want to, you know, work on these causes more. Well, let's describe to our listeners, describe the spaceship, describe what's it going to be like? I get in and then what happens?
Yeah, so imagine it's early morning, it's dark out. You step out onto the deck of this beautiful marine spaceport and you get into this incredibly comfortable space lounge that's inside the capsule of Spaceship Neptune, right? There's a bar there, there's a loo there, there's Wi-Fi, there's these super comfy chairs. You get to sit down. You will be asked to strap in for the first 15 minutes. The pilot will tell you you're about to lift off and you will feel the spaceship being taken up to space by the space balloon incredibly gently. It's going to be very smooth. So you're rising up, and for about 2 hours, you will be going up to space. Now imagine you're seeing the sun come up over the limb of the Earth. And I've seen video of a sunrise from that altitude. I mean, it's madness. It is astonishingly beautiful. And it starts before sunrise. So you're going to, but first you'll, of course, see the incredible starscape without the sun. So you'll have no light pollution. It'll just be amazing. And then you will start to see the sun, and you see kind of, if you're seeing a sunrise, you'll see sort of these crazy rainbows that come across the planet. And then you'll see the sun against the deep, dark blackness of space. And when you talk to people who have seen this, they talk about the colors being like something they've never seen before. Like the black is the deepest black you've ever seen, which is kind of crazy, actually. And so you'll see that. You'll be up there for a couple of hours, and then it'll take you another 2 hours to come back down. The capsule splashes gently in the water. 2 fast boats come over, wave to everybody inside. The ship comes up, picks the capsule, puts it up, puts it on the deck of the ship, and within about 15 minutes or so of splash, you'll be on the deck of the ship and being brought ashore again and having a great celebration of everything you just experienced.
And what's the size of the capsule, the size of the balloon?
Yeah, so it seats 8 customers, explorers, as we call our customers, 8 explorers and a captain. Mind you, the captain does not have a whole lot to do. So the vehicle can fly itself. It can be flown for mission control on the ground, and then there's another mission control on the ship. So really, the captain is there just to make sure everybody is, super comfortable and got everything they need and curating this experience. So it is 16 feet in diameter. And so it's roomy. You can get up and walk around and go stand at the bar. You can cheers in the middle.
No seatbelts required.
No
seatbelts required for liftoff. And
not during the majority of the flight. Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of this thing. It's so incredible smooth. Yes, that's exactly right. And by the way, you're looking out the largest windows ever flown to space. One of my parameters was that one of our board members is well over 6 feet tall, and I promised him he was going to be able to stand in the window without ducking. I think we've made it.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I hear this is when you see these images of the astronauts when they're going up into space, and they're in their space suits, they're shaking and rattling, and the rockets. This sounds like you're just floating up like you'd be in a hot air balloon, pretty much. Is that probably the feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. This is exactly the opposite of how we normally think of as space flight. And that's the unlock here. That's what's, really making this so accessible. And then we're also adding on our own sort of reimagined way of experience space on top of that. So the capsule itself, you don't have high Gs. You don't need to be wearing a fancy spacesuit or, do all the training or any of that. This is absolutely gentle. You're in a pressurized capsule with your beverage of choice and your loved ones, and, you're heading to space. I mean, it is just completely different experience. And then the way we designed the interior actually took a huge amount of work. We originally thought, we're taking everybody to space to see the Earth from space. So we're going to sit everybody in front of their own window and stare out at the world. And then all of a sudden, when we set that up in a mock-up, I wanted to talk to people, and I was looking over my shoulder. I'm like, we just made this a completely solitary experience. So we flipped it around, and now we've got this very social space lounge, as we call it, because we also want it to be incredibly inviting and relaxing for people. And so there's a space lounge for people to look out at Earth. So it's as much a shared, relaxed experience as it is understanding our place in the universe as we look out at our beautiful planet from that vantage point.
I certainly can see right away for, let's just say, the average person that wants to experience Earth in a new way. Space travel and space station, pretty much every time we've gone up into space has been tended towards being scientists that want to, run experiments. And you've created experiments that have gone up into the space station, all that. How do you see this as a new opportunity for scientists?
Oh, awesome. Yes. So we absolutely are taking science payloads on every flight, actually. So we already took science payloads on our early test flights. So one of the huge advantages of what we're doing for science is repeat flights to an area that people have hardly ever gone and studied. It's a very difficult place to get to. Technically, it's called the stratosphere. And it is really important for understanding aspects of climate change, for example, upper atmospheric science. I mean, there's additional science we can do also that is fairly traditionally done with these kinds of balloons, which is with heliophysics and astronomy and astrophysics, because you can fly these huge telescopes. But for us, what's really valuable for scientists is that they don't generally get to do multiple flights. One or two, maybe three if they're super lucky. What we're going to be able to offer is repeat flights, because we're going to be flying so much. And what's exciting, we're actually already in discussions with a number of really valuable organizations whose names you would recognize, to fly payloads as part of Spaceship Neptune that fly on every flight, because it then gets what's called a transect. We're doing a transect up through the atmosphere and back down. So you're constantly taking data about the atmosphere, different parts of the atmosphere, different atmospheric species, different, obviously temperature, humidity, and all of those kinds of things, but other gases as well that have not yet to date been studied at the degree that we are. And also in the locations, remember, we're going to be out over the ocean, which is difficult to get to as well, all around the world eventually. So we're super excited about what we can do. And let's also talk about kids. So I'm super excited that we actually get to take kids experiments. So on our first flight, it was precious. We ran a competition, and we had kids compete to fly their science payloads. And the two winners happened to be both girls, and watching the videos of them hearing that they had won, it was priceless. I mean, they were screaming. They were so excited about it. So we also get to take kids along on this journey as well, which is so important. And we also flew kids art. We're big proponents of STEAM, not just STEM.
There's other companies, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, all taking slightly different approaches in terms of how high they go. Blue Origin, somewhat conventional. You're strapped to a rocket ship. It lasts a few minutes. You're on the other end of the spectrum, 6-hour flight, right? Relax. Virgin Galactic, I think somewhere in between. I don't know. It's a little bit less time, but it's not the full rocket feeling. And then there's cost too. And I think, although not everyone has announced their prices, you have. I think it's $125K. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you compare to these other approaches, pluses, minuses? Maybe they complement each other. What are your thoughts on these different approaches people are taking to open up space travel to the masses, say?
So I think maybe the first thing to say is that demand for this is huge. So what is actually limiting the number of people that are going to space is by no means demand. It is how many operators there are. So because there's so few operators, this is going to be supply side limited for many years to come, which is actually a great place for us as a business to be in. So the way we think about it is that, rising tide floats all boats. We are not in competition with Blue Origin and Virgin, and certainly not Axiom or SpaceX, right? It's very different experiences. In many ways, we think of ourselves as a gateway for them. So, for example, think about people going up on a rocket flight, and you've literally got 5 or 6 Gs as you're launching or as you're descending. What that feels like, apparently, is an elephant sitting on your chest. Not that I've ever had an elephant sitting on my chest, but I think
it's a good thing to avoid, I heard. I want to go back to the cost, $125,000. And so the first thing I did is wonder what is the most expensive airline ticket you could buy. And what I found was that for $30,000 on, I think it's an airline from the Middle East, you can have your own mini apartment with a shower. I suppose it's on a 747 or a very large wide body aircraft. It's $30,000. So you're getting close, right? I mean, it's a factor of 4. It's not a factor of 10 or 100. And compared to the most expensive airline ticket that's out there. What do you think has to happen to get that 125 down to, it's like a ticket from, London to LA or something like a business class seat, or, get it down to 10K or 5K or
Yeah. Yeah, no. I think you're raising all kinds of interesting points. So first of all, when we set the ticket price, we actually looked a lot at, what's happening in the luxury travel industry, right? So people go on these beautiful safaris. You go to the Antarctic, go on a plane flight, around the world. That's all in the area of $100,000 to $200,000. So we're right in there with what you might call the luxury travel industry. And so, the way we think about it is, how exciting it would be for people to be sort of sitting around the dining room table thinking about, well, are we going to go on another safari? Are we going to go see the Northern Lights? Kind of done that. Or are we going to go to space? So we've, in many ways, sort of created a new destination for people to think about going to. So that's incredibly exciting. And the demand is so huge, Ed, that it is likely that the ticket prices are going to go up before they're going to go down. However, having said that, we are obviously, of course, thinking about what it would take over the long run to bring prices down. I think eventually they will come down. We're thinking about tiered products. I don't know that the higher end one will go away. But it's about scale. It's about getting a lot of people flying. When you're only flying a handful of people a year, as is really currently happening, it's going to be very difficult to get the prices down. But once you've got thousands of people flying to space, that's when you're going to start seeing the prices really rocket down. I mean, they've already come down a lot over the last years. If you think about just the price of rocket launches, I'm not talking necessarily space travel per se, but rocket launches. And then the same thing will happen just with efficiency of scale as we start flying more and more people to space.
But you are going into space, so the hydrogen, you're safe with the hydrogen. It's like you said, it's a technology that's become quite mature. It's not a lot of issues with it, but things in the capsule itself. You said there's a pilot. For the most part, the pilot's going to be able to enjoy himself. Hopefully, he's not drinking too much champagne or whatever while the rest. But things can go wrong. Can you talk a little bit about? I would imagine you have a ground control of some kind. What are they doing? There's some remote monitoring control going on. And what happens if something does go wrong? What safety measures?
Yeah, so there's a lot in there, right? So safety obviously is absolutely critical. So this is a really safe way of going to space. So let's kind of break that down. So the balloon is the primary flight system. That's what's carrying the capsule to space and then safely returning it to Earth. So the balloon itself is the kind of balloon that NASA has flown over 1,000 times. ESA, our team has flown it many times. It's a very well understood technology. Then between the balloon and the capsule is a set of parachutes, 4 parachute systems, and they're only used in an off-nominal scenario because the capsule goes up under the balloon and back down under the balloon, which also means it's a very seamless experience because you don't ever transfer from one kind of flight system to another.
No stages.
That also means you get rid of all of that complexity, so you're just going up and down. So it's pretty straightforward, right? But the parachutes are there just in case. So there's 4 of them, and you don't need all of them to work. So you've even got redundancy within the parachutes. And then the capsule itself, I mean, that's the kind of thing I've been, working on most of my career is working on those kinds of systems in our team. And there's lots of redundancies within the capsule as well. I mean, as we talked about, a really simple example is just the operations, right? That it can be operated from the ground, it can be operated automatically, and then it can also be operated by the captain. So there's just redundancies built into everything.
You mentioned in your career, you've built these environments and suits for people, and I was reading about the Red Bull space jump that Alan Eustace did. And one of the things I found fascinating about that is you were involved in the design of that suit, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, our team was. So it was part of a former company that Tabor and I co-founded called Paragon Space Development Corporation that's now run by our third co-founder. And that actually, technically, that company is what did the StratX jump that you're referring
exactly.
to, where we broke the Red Bull Stratos jump. And Paragon built the spacesuit. It was actually the first spacesuit, believe it or not, it was the first new spacesuit built, tested, and flown in America in 40 years when we flew it. Insane.
And what year was that?
We broke the record in 2014.
2014. And so for people that may not be familiar, 136,000 feet up. And how many miles is that?
Yeah, so people probably wouldn't be familiar. So everyone would remember the Felix Baumgartner jump, right? Where he, because that was heavily promoted. And in fact, they kind of broke the internet with it at the time. Their head of content for that is now our head of content as well. So he's the one who brought you those incredible, iconic images of Felix standing on the threshold, looking out dramatically over the planet. And then he just sort of throws himself out. I mean, it's sort of mad to watch. I was one of the 10 million people watching real time. And so that was done in 2012. And he went to 128,000 feet. He was actually taken up in a capsule and he had to step out of the capsule. It turns out it's much simpler and counterintuitively safer for this particular application to take, in this instance, Alan Eustace, who was at the time a Google executive, up in a spacesuit, literally just hanging onto the balloon. So he was connected to the balloon. We took him up for just over 2 hours. It took him to get up to 136,000 feet. You're right. Then we intentionally dropped him. He free fell for almost 5 minutes. He broke the speed of sound, and then he opened his parachute and came in for a safe landing. I mean, it was incredibly exciting. And the reason that you wouldn't have heard about it is because we didn't want it, Google didn't want it, Alan didn't want any press really to speak of. So we had just a smidgen. We had a New York Times reporter at the final record jump, just, because if it's not in the press at all, it didn't happen.
For the last part of our talk today, I want to talk a little bit about the future of space travel and pick up right here with Biosphere. One thing we haven't talked about, at least with respect to Biosphere, I think it was 2 years or a long period of time. What about the mental aspects of being with the same 7, 8 people, whatever the number was, for all that time? I mean, it could be good, could be bad, but too bad you're stuck. What?
Ed, you got to read my book about it. We all went completely mad. My book's called The Human Experiment for a reason.
Oh, well, does that not bode well for future space travel, you think?
So I think as humans, we are generally pretty resilient. So it does take resilience for sure. That's one of the key attributes for people going on something like this. Yeah, I mean, it was the most incredible thing to be involved with. It was the hardest thing I ever done, right? It was, 8 of us sealed inside. Talk about cabin fever. I mean, it's cabin fever, just like blown out of proportion. Turns out that there is a constellation of symptoms that tend to occur with people in isolated, confined environments, as it's called. So it happens to people in the Antarctic, if they're a long time on a submarine, and there's different aspects of it. One of them is you tend to break into warring factions, which is what we did. We had 8 people in there, and we broke into, it turns out that 8 is the worst number.
Speaking of getting to space and biospheres, when do you think we'll have that first biosphere on Mars?
Moon is super interesting. There's been so many debates over the years. Oh, are we going to do Moon? Are we going to do Mars first? Look, I think Moon is super interesting because it's close, because I want us all to be going, right? I don't want it just to be for the few scientists, for the few astronauts, that eventually we're going to have hotels, we're going to have people living on the moon. And that's super exciting. And that is going to happen before we have people really living long term on Mars, simply because it's so far away and difficult to get to. And I think that's super exciting. Not because I want us to be leaving planet Earth, but because I think these explorations, these outposts, they bring us things that otherwise could not happen here on Earth, right? I mean, there's the reason why the great navigators explored our world initially, our planet that seemed so huge initially. Now our solar system seems so huge. Now imagine if we're going out and all of those people will be looking back at Earth and having that space perspective, and an increasing amount the further you get away, right? You get that little tiny experience of the pale blue dot that Carl Sagan spoke about when he took that image of Earth from the edge of our solar system in the 90s. I mean, wow, that was an iconic image. So, I think it's very exciting and will definitely happen. Can I tell you when? Probably not.
Well, an adventure in more than one way, I guess. It gives us something to look forward. Jane, thank you. Thank you so much for a really, really interesting discussion and opening up our eyes on Future Car Podcast to the future of mobility in a new dimension. Thank you so much.
You bet. It was super fun. Thanks, Ed.